Okay, we are here with Matthew Foulkes, our new Pro Tour Lille champion, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Just a roller coaster day, you know. I never thought I would have another day like I felt when I won the English Nationals, and to have a day even more amazing is out of this world. It's outrageous.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
It was a blast to watch you.
Thank you.
How are you feeling at the moment?
I'm just over the moon. I just feel so grateful. I put a good amount of work in. I think I came up with a different idea and a different approach. I tried to think different to other people. Like if everyone thinks one thing, I try to think, okay, maybe there is something else. You know, because usually people have some good idea, but there is, especially in a game as small as Flesh and Blood, often there is areas unexplored. You know, people haven't done all the research and all the work and all the thinking and the understanding. So often you can find, you know, improvements or adjustments or, you know, new ways to play that are slightly better. And I think that's what this deck is. So.
Tell us a little bit more about your champion choice.
Okay, so we are playing Briar, which was an absolute lockout here at the Pro Tour. We had 4 Briars in the top 4, which is pretty crazy. I think what makes Briar so good, and in particular, sort of this version, is Channel Mount Heroic, and also the ability to use Rosetta Thorn really reliably. I think that's one edge my deck has over some of the other versions, is my deck actually has much better patterns to abuse the Rosetta Thorn, and I get to Rosetta Thorn a lot more. And getting 1 for 4 is honestly almost a complete robbery. So yeah. I guess moving on, the next thing that makes Briar so insane is her massive fridge, is the equipment. A big upgrade for this deck this expansion was the Crown of Providence. We have a lot of like very specific cards in this deck. You know, you have Earth Blues, 3 power attacks, belittles, channels, non-attacks, attacks. You need to fill so many like different categories, so many different buckets you need to fill for your turns to work. And sometimes, you know, you just have a card that doesn't do it. You know, something goes into your arsenal, it's just not the one you're looking for. You hit with a snatch, you draw a terrible card, it goes in your arsenal. You hit with a Promise of Plenty, something terrible goes in your arsenal. Crown just solves that issue for our deck massively, and it just increased the consistency of this deck absurdly, while also still being 2 block of armor, which is absolutely ridiculous. Along with, you know, Grasp is always an absolute stalwart. Aether Iron Weave, and the one thing that I think was different in my deck to all the other Briar decks, because there was another Belittle Briar in the deck in the top 8, was that I played Spellbound Creepers. With Belittle and Minnowism, Spellbound Creepers is just completely abusable. It's really easy to have a 3 card, like 14 damage turn, 5 card, 18 damage turn. You can really start to push the boat out. And then, as we saw in the final, I managed to go Snatch, my opponent blocked, Creepers, Channel Mount Heroic. Unfortunately, he did have the D-React to stop me from living the dream, but you know, I still got to instant speed a Channel Mount Heroic, and that's such an absurd playing pattern that when you get to draw the card and get the channel, it's just otherworldly. And then we have a bit of Null Rune. This stuff is probably a bit overkill. I had 2 AB and Shock Charmers for Kano and Icelander. It only ended up that there was 2 Kanos in the field and only around 40 Icelanders. I never saw any of them, but I think in this deck you have such a specific like core strategy that you need to keep tight in your deck. You can't reduce a lot of your ratios that much, so you can't really sideboard too much. So I felt that you can sort of include these equipment slots kind of for free, and if you do end up facing a Kano, you get a lot of edge by having AB2 and Spell Void 2, and then you play the Tunic for all the slower matchups like the Guardians, Prism, sometimes when you're going first, Dromai, you know, there's a few different spots to use the Tunic as well. And that's basically all of our equipment. I'll now move on to my favorite card in the game, by far, and that is all 6 Belittles and the red and 1 blue Minnowism. This card was the reason I wanted to play this deck. It's it's crazy to me that every time I've tried to put this card in a deck, people tell me, well, I don't think it's that good. Like, oh, it's so hard. You have to put 3 power attacks in your deck. The requirements are too much. And I'm like, okay, but you play a 6-for-1 go again with upside, you know? Like, I don't know, like, what I need to tell people or show people. I guess hopefully now, finally, I can stop people from telling me, oh, I don't think Belittle Minimalism is that good. It's that good. You know, I've been screaming it for a year. Like, people joke at me saying, oh, like, you're just the Belittle Minimalism guy. I mean, yeah, and for good reason. I think the card's absolutely insane. So, but to play Belittle Minimalism, you also need to have a lot of 3 power attacks. So, let's move into the choices we had, because I think the fact that I had different choices.
Let us put the equipment aside.
Sure. Let's move all this stuff across. The fact that we had different choices is part of what made my deck unique, and it was starting off with a real banger, Yellow Snatch. I'm playing zero cost 3 power attacks, whereas most people's lists in this archetype had the 1 power attacks, Vexing Malice and Explosive Growth. But the change that I made was that by playing the 0 cost 3 power attacks, you have the play pattern available where you go Belittle, reveal a Yellow Snatch, use Spellbound Creepers, play the Minnowism, gaining an action point, play the Snatch with pseudo go again, because you're now at 2 action points, into a weapon swing, which is going to be, 13 damage off 3 cards, with an on hit for 6 to draw a card. That's 3 cards, that's an insane turn. That's more than 4 damage per card, with a really powerful on hit, and you're threatening an embodiment as well. That's just an exceptional turn. We also have the Red Snatch. It doesn't fulfill the role for Briar, but 4 for 0, draw a card. It's just too good not to take. Got to have it. Swarming Gloomveil, a reliable source of go again. Allows us to extend our turns. When we have Channel Mount Heroic, it really allows us to do some ridiculous things. We have Arcanic Crackle. This card is secretly pretty broken. It's a 4 for 0 that also procs Belittle, and it always guarantees you an embodiment pretty much. It's just a great card. This one is not what everyone else is playing. Promise of Plenty gets both players in an arsenal, but you get to choose when you do it, and it's a 3 power cost attack with go again. And a lot of this decks in this format, especially things like Phi, Viscerai, Briar, they aren't very good at blocking, and you can force them to block by threatening on hits, and that's when you're really making profit. And then the final one is just Overload. It's not great, but it has a use. It can really force things out of your opponent, and in the end, this was the card I attacked with to win the tournament. So I won't speak badly upon it, Okay, so moving on, we have the more staple, the one everyone knows Briar for is Channel Mount Heroic. This card, the games where you draw this card look a lot easier than the ones you don't. It just allows you to do some of the most broken things. Yesterday, one of my teammates playing this deck, his opponent put him on the play going first. He played a Channel Mount Heroic. His opponent took a turn. He took the next turn, attacked with a Snatch, flashed in a second Channel Mount Heroic, played a Force of Nature, and then proceeded to take a 58 damage turn, winning the game on the second turn. His opponent played 1 turn, and then the game ended. So this card can be a little bit unfair. In the last 2 rounds I played on camera there, I found an early Channel Mount Heroic and pulled away to a really big lead, and then proceeded to draw terribly and not be able to close the game out easily, and really had to fight tooth and nail just to get the job done. The rest of the Earth package is Bramble Sparks, which are a 4 for 0, a relatively good non-attack. We have relatively reliable. Force of Nature, a blue blocks 4 often, that can have a really relevant effect, just a really powerful card, especially when combined with Channel Mount Heroic. And then we just have we have 9, 13 Earth Blues. This is about the right number. I tried to keep the attack and non-attack ratios in my deck at 50-50 pretty much always for our Sinatra Arcanixes and our Tome of the Arknights. And so that's why I've gone for this exact specific setup. And then I'm not sure how much of it was on camera, but before the round I was making sure with my sideboarding I counted out 30 and 30 just to make sure I have the ratios right, make sure I'm remembering everything correctly and I have everything set up, because you want to maximize your chances to get as lucky as possible basically. Okay, so this is the Earth package. Now we will move on to the remaining non-attacks in the deck. Sinatra Arcanix. This deck is really good at generating a lot of mana with Belittles, and it has a really high blue count. So Sinatra is actually a really powerful card, because often we can do it for 4, for 2, for 6, and we can. It allows us not only just to be a non-attack, but also to replace itself, deal damage, and use our mana efficiently. I was shaking on the last turn of the game when I cast a Sonata, which is about a 66% chance to hit, in this game state, and I was basically flipping a coin for all the marbles. Gorganian Tome. It's an upstart goblin. It's draw a card, go again. If I could play more of this card, even if it didn't have the extra effect, I would play loads. This card's outrageous. Such a great card. I really love it. Tome of the Arknight. I had some absolutely wild time to this card this weekend. It's mostly just here as a blue, but it has the upside that it can really get the job done when you need it to be. It's a 50-50 between drawing 2 or drawing 0, which is kind of like drawing 1 on average. And so drawing 1 on average for 1 mana is kind of like playing a yellow, because if it costs 0, it would be a red. So I think of it kind of like a yellow. It's a blue that plays like a yellow, and sometimes that's good enough. It also allows for some absolutely ridiculous things to happen. In my winning in for top 8 yesterday, I played 3 Tome of the Arknights in one turn, and hit all 3 Tome of the Arknights in one turn. I counted at the end of that turn, and I drew and played 15 cards in one turn. Pretty ridiculous. And then the final non-attacks that are pretty staple in the deck are This Round's on Me. It's a bit of a tech inclusion for Fi, but it also just fills the requirement of being a blue block 3. A lot of people play Sift in this slot, but I think this gives you massive edge into the Fi matchups, which I did expect to be a bit more prevalent this weekend. But it's still a blue block 3, and that's an amazing card a lot of the time. So the last thing getting there is our remaining sideboard slots. 2 lead the charge. These are there for Prism. They really help you in the long game against Prism not to get overwhelmed by the auras. They help you to catch up. 1 Smashing Good Time. This card was a bit of a last minute inclusion. We were sat at the banquet on Friday, and we had no idea what we wanted our last card to be. And there were 2 guys sleeving up Dash next to us, so we thought, screw those 2 guys specifically, we'll put a Smashing Good Time in, and we didn't know what else. Tome of Findel. I ended up only playing 1 of these. I hadn't really, in most of the matchups where I wanted it, I hadn't really tested this card much before the tournament, but we played a little bit and it seemed great. In the tournament it wasn't great, it was just fine, but it was, still alright, and still happy I had it there. I'd probably cut it back down to 1. And then we have our 6 poppers for Prism. I decided to include Command and Conquer over a Raise Face because we wanted to make sure that we had a good plan into Lexi, because we thought there would be some number of Lexis here, and I wasn't that fussed to have a Raise Face over Lexi, because I think people are massively overrating a Raise Face into decks like Viserai and stuff. So I was happier to take the big upside against Lexi than maybe a medium upside against Viserai, and I ended up playing against the Lexi once in the tournament, and I drew all 3 CNCs in it, which game winning for me, so I was really happy with that. And then the Runic Reclamations are just an all-star into Prism. They can come up in the Briar matchup, but that's about it. Like, you can kill a Channel Mount Heroic, or at least make them block and disrupt their turn. But that is the deck. It's awesome, and most of all, this deck is so fun to play. This is by far the most fun deck I've played in Flesh and Blood. You're drawing loads of cards, you're going again, you're making extra action points, you're taking ridiculous turns. It is a bit of a feast or famine deck. Sometimes you'll take a turn and you'll be like, okay, I had 4 cards and I did 4 damage. And then sometimes you'll be like, I have 4 cards and I did 35 damage, you know, but you have to be willing to sort of take the variance as it comes, be willing and not afraid of taking the flips when you need to, and then when you can avoid that, obviously you want to do that as well. So yeah, that sums it up. My PT winning Briar deck. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for showing us this deck. We also have some questions for you.
Sure.
Yeah, at first, like, how does it feel for you to be here in France and with all the people from around the world? Like, tell us a little bit more about your experience playing against all these different nationalities.
It's always interesting to see what people from around the world like come with and their different perspectives, because it's not always the same. Like you also play people from different cultures and different experiences. I had pretty much brilliant tournament experience. I had no real bad experiences, no unfriendly opponents. It was just a pleasure to interact with everyone and the community start to finish. My first interaction with the Flesh and Blood community was not the most positive one. Winning UK Nationals last year, I came away from that tournament with I was unsporting in some of my actions at that tournament. I regretted how that tournament played out and how I acted in some of the spots, and I've worked really hard over the past year to try to be the kind of national champion the UK community would want, and I hope I've been able to at least do that in some part, and so this is really just sort of just the best way I could possibly finish this season.
What do you like generally about Flesh and Blood and being in the community?
What's really interesting about the Flesh and Blood community is that even when things to me appear like very obvious, like people will still have differing opinions. So if, like, for example, one thing is like Belittle. To me, this card is completely obviously broken, whereas there's basically every other Briar here didn't play the card, and it's like we've all seen the Briar deck, but it seems that not many people bothered to do the work on it. I like that Flesh and Blood is still quite small and close knit, because you can get to know lots of people, and this weekend I've met so many people who I've spoken to on Discord, or that I've met through coaching, or that we played on Flesh and Blood online, or we played on Tabletop Simulator one time, and just having this global community where people can practice and learn and improve, in a game as small as Flesh and Blood, if you're willing to do the work and actually explore and try and find new ideas, very often you can, and that's one of the parts that I love about Flesh and Blood is actually being able to find new things, whereas in a lot of bigger games, the formats are so worked on via data and massive samples of games that it can be hard to find a genuinely new idea and new concept. And so that's another thing I love about Flesh and Blood.
And in the future, what are you hoping for Flesh and Blood, or what are you looking up to now with Dynasty maybe? I'm
not really sure. I was thinking maybe to take a break after this tournament. I guess that's not really on the cards now I won. I probably have to keep going for a little bit, see how I do now this has happened. I hope that we can see some way to slow the game down a little. I think my deck is sort of a testament to maybe some of the issues we've seen over the past year with some of the bannings we've had. My deck kind of pushes the attacking is all you want to be doing to the maximum. It's just trying to maximize its offensive potential as much as possible. It can block in some spots, and the fact it has such a good fridge does that, but I would like to see some way for Flesh and Blood to slow the game down. Maybe introducing, I don't know, base 4-block cards, or just some way to make blocking more viable in the game would not in an oppressive way, hopefully, and it's a hard thing to balance, but to make a game where there is back and forth and it's not just how much can I pump, because it has felt a little bit like that, and while this deck is incredibly fun, it is just trying to pump a lot of damage every turn pretty much. So yeah, that would be sort of where I see myself, hopefully winning Worlds as well, I've got a Nats win, I've got a PT win, so there's just one left. That's my goal, win Worlds.
Alright, before we close the video, are there any mentions you have for the end? Do you want to shout out anyone?
Yeah, okay. I forgot to mention them in a couple of other videos, but I want to shout out the Flesh and Blood online developers. Yeah. So I said I'd been a bit down on the game. I had some other stuff going on in my life. I've not been in a great place financially either. Been struggling, and I just haven't really been. I've been worrying about other stuff. Haven't really had time or motivation to go out and play the game in real life. But the ease and convenience of Flesh and Blood Online was genuinely how I played every single one of my games to practice for this tournament. And it went from me playing basically no Flesh and Blood to just a few weeks ago. I got on the program and just started jamming games every day. 5 to 10 games, just thinking and talking and playing more games. And without that, I wouldn't be sat here right now. No chance. So big shout out to them. It's a really great program, and anyone that wants to improve, I offer coaching. You can reach out to me on Twitter if that's something people are interested in. One of the big things I try to get across to people who come to me for coaching is that Flesh and Blood Online is the best place to be trying to get practice and improve. And honestly, the level of competition, even if you're just playing random pickup games on there, it's actually pretty great. It's pretty great. I played a bunch of PT players just playing random games on there. You recognize players who you're playing in the Pro Tour, so it's that would be someone I shout out. And then also my girlfriend, my mum, all the UK people I tested with for this tournament. I won't shout every one of them, but yeah, that's everyone I want to thank.
Okay, Matthew, thank you so much for
Thank you very much, Alex.
See you next time.
See you next time.